Friends, today let's talk about our old friend, America. It's been a while since we talked about the United States, so let's get into it. Recently, President Trump has been extremely angry. Originally, he was in a great mood. After all, his 80th birthday is coming up in mid-June, and this year also marks the 250th anniversary of the United States. Celebrating your birthday alongside your country's 250th birthday sounds pretty good. But then a phone call with Bibi changed everything. Trump wanted to reach a deal with Iran before his birthday. If he could pull it off, he would look like a peacemaker. The world would appear more stable, and it would be good for his image. Because of that, Trump reportedly warned Israel to stop its military operations in Lebanon. In simple terms, he was asking Israel to give him some room to work. But Netanyahu didn't give him that room. Instead, Israel expanded military operations in Lebanon and reportedly killed a senior commander. Iran quickly responded. Iranian officials said that because of Israel's continued military actions in Lebanon, their negotiating team would suspend indirect talks with the United States. In other words, if America wanted negotiations, it should first deal with Israel. Then another report appeared. Iran was said to be considering a full closure of the Strait of Hormuz, while also preparing pressure in the Bab el-Mandeb region. At that point, Trump reportedly lost his patience. He wanted a ceasefire. He wanted negotiations. Instead, the region was moving in the opposite direction. And Trump wasn't the only one hoping for peace. Even some Israeli restaurant owners reportedly wanted the fighting to stop. Israeli media has reported cases where customers stay inside restaurants after finishing their meals, waiting for air raid sirens so they can remain in protected areas longer. Restaurant owners probably aren't too happy about that. Maybe they should switch to buffet service and make customers pay before entering. Trying to stop the situation from getting worse, Trump personally called Netanyahu on June 1st. According to unnamed sources, Trump was genuinely angry during the conversation. He reportedly told Netanyahu that he had supported him repeatedly and that Israel's actions were making things harder for the United States. Trump reportedly argued that continued fighting would only isolate Israel further on the international stage. He wanted the military campaign stopped. Netanyahu reportedly responded by saying that if conditions allowed, Israel could consider stopping. Sources described it as one of the worst conversations between the two leaders since Trump's return to office. After the call, Trump publicly claimed that a ceasefire was within reach. And for a brief moment, it looked like he might be right. On June 1st, both sides announced a ceasefire. On June 2nd, fighting resumed. Israel blamed Lebanon. Lebanon blamed Israel. And just like that, the ceasefire was over. As a result, Trump's hopes for talks with Iran suffered another setback. Part of the problem was also Trump's own inconsistent approach. His position often changes, making negotiations more difficult. That uncertainty creates opportunities for other players in the region. Israel can continue operations. Iran can point to those operations as a reason not to compromise, and the conflict drags on. The longer it continues, the more complicated everything becomes for Washington. Trump has always been known for changing direction quickly. On June 3rd, during a television interview, he confirmed that he had spoken harshly to Netanyahu. But he also reminded people that he had praised Netanyahu many times before. Back in December, Trump called him a hero and publicly expressed support for Israel. Now, however, Trump says he supports Netanyahu while also being frustrated by Israel's actions in Lebanon. According to Trump, Netanyahu simply cannot stop himself from starting conflicts. Trump compared the situation to a police officer catching a thief. The officer asks why the thief doesn't get a normal job. The thief answers that even at a construction site, he might end up stealing bricks. That, according to Trump, is the kind of person Netanyahu is, a difficult person, a dangerous person. But still someone he supports. The relationship between the United States and Israel remains extremely strong. At the same time, Washington still wants to continue negotiations with Iran. Trump has even suggested that direct talks with Iran's supreme leader could be useful. He said that if the timing is right, the two sides might meet face to face. According to Trump, direct communication would be more effective than passing messages through intermediaries. Iran has not responded to the suggestion. And even if they wanted to, arranging such a meeting would be extremely difficult. Iran's supreme leader rarely appears publicly. He does not regularly hold public events, interviews, or media appearances. Very little information about him is available. That makes any direct meeting highly unlikely. Since negotiations remain stalled, military actions continue. On June 2nd, American forces reportedly struck an Iranian communications facility on Qeshm Island. Iranian forces responded by targeting the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet. American officials later stated that all missiles and drones were intercepted and that no damage occurred. Soon afterward, another round of strikes and retaliation followed. Again, both sides claimed success. Again, both sides claimed the other side failed, and the cycle continued. While military pressure increased, diplomatic pressure continued as well. Iran insisted it would not give up its enriched uranium program. Iran also maintained its position regarding the Strait of Hormuz. Those positions frustrated Trump even further. On June 3rd, Trump suggested that American pressure on Iran could continue for months. At the same time, he repeated that the United States would not allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons. But all of this depends on one important factor: Israel. If Israel continues military operations, negotiations become much harder. And that is exactly what has been happening. As a result, Trump has become increasingly frustrated with Netanyahu and the entire situation in the Middle East. At the same time, problems were also appearing inside the United States. One issue that angered Trump involved the Kennedy Center. Last year, plans were announced to give Trump a larger presence in the center's future development and renovation plans. Supporters saw it as recognition of his influence. Critics saw it very differently. Democrats and various activist groups challenged the idea in court. They argued that the Kennedy Center was created to honor President John F. Kennedy and should remain focused on that purpose. The legal battle continued for months. Eventually, a judge ruled against the proposed changes. Trump-related branding would be removed. Renovation plans connected to those changes would be suspended. The decision made Trump furious. He argued that the ruling was politically motivated. According to Trump, the building had suffered from years of neglect and poor management. He insisted that major repairs were needed and claimed that only strong leadership could restore the center. In his view, opponents cared more about politics than preserving an important American institution. As if that wasn't enough, another controversy soon emerged. Trump had planned to participate in events connected to America's 250th anniversary celebrations. One of those events involved a major public gathering that included musical performances. But once reports circulated that Trump would be attending, several performers reportedly withdrew. Some artists allegedly stated that they did not want to participate if Trump was involved. Out of the originally planned performers, several backed out. Trump responded in his usual style. He said he didn't care whether they performed or not. According to him, if the artists didn't want to participate, he could simply replace the event with a large political rally. In his view, a rally with enthusiastic supporters would be more exciting than a concert anyway. The controversy quickly became another political fight. Supporters said the artists were being partisan. Critics said the artists had every right to refuse. Either way, the argument dominated headlines. Another unusual debate centered around a proposed $250 bill featuring Trump's portrait. Supporters argued that Trump's impact on American politics justified the honor. Critics pointed out a major problem. American law generally prohibits living people from appearing on U.S. currency. Changing that would require congressional action. Some lawmakers proposed creating an exception. Others opposed the idea entirely. As a result, the proposal remained stuck in political limbo. Nothing moved forward. For Trump, however, an even bigger issue involved a proposed compensation fund connected to claims of political targeting. The idea was to create a large fund to assist people who believed they had been unfairly targeted by government actions during previous administrations. Supporters argued that many Americans had been treated unfairly and deserved compensation. Critics immediately raised concerns. They asked a simple question: who exactly qualifies? The definition appeared vague. Opponents worried that political allies could receive benefits while ordinary Americans would receive nothing. As debate intensified, federal courts stepped in. Judges ordered reviews of various agreements connected to the funding. Several legal challenges followed. The entire project was effectively frozen. What frustrated Trump even more was that opposition wasn't only coming from Democrats. Some Republicans were also criticizing the idea. Several senior Republican figures publicly questioned whether taxpayer money should be used in such a way. They argued that government funds should not become political tools. Their criticism created an unusual situation. Trump was being challenged by people from both parties. That made the fight much harder. Meanwhile, the media continued attacking him from another direction. Reporters began focusing heavily on Trump's stock trading activity. According to various reports, large numbers of trades had occurred during the first quarter of the year. Critics claimed that some trades appeared connected to policy decisions. Supporters denied any wrongdoing. They argued that professional advisors handled investment decisions and that Trump was not personally managing every transaction. Still, the story refused to disappear. Every time a policy announcement affected the market, reporters examined Trump's financial activity. When technology stocks rose, questions appeared. When defense stocks moved, questions appeared. When markets reacted to events involving Iran, more questions appeared. The White House repeatedly denied accusations of corruption. Officials insisted that all rules were being followed. But the controversy continued, generating headlines. One example involved shares of Palantir. After Trump publicly praised the company, its stock price increased significantly. Critics immediately questioned whether political influence was affecting markets. Supporters argued that the company simply benefited from positive attention. Regardless of the explanation, the story became another source of political conflict. And then there was the issue of government appointments. On June 2nd, Trump appointed Bill Pult as acting director of national intelligence. The appointment immediately sparked controversy. Pult came from a successful business background. However, critics argued that he lacked significant intelligence experience. Supporters responded that experience isn't everything. They argued that loyalty, leadership, and management skills also matter. Critics weren't convinced. Former intelligence officials publicly questioned whether someone without deep intelligence experience should oversee such sensitive responsibilities. Some described the appointment as risky. Others described it as reckless. Several current and former officials openly criticized the decision. Even some Republicans expressed doubts. The White House responded by defending Pult. Officials described him as talented, capable, and committed to serving the country. They argued that many criticisms were unfair and politically motivated. But by that point, the controversy was already spreading. Poll numbers reflected the growing tension. Several surveys showed Trump's approval rating slipping. Support remained strong among many Republican voters. However, overall national numbers were becoming more challenging. Democrats quickly used those polls as evidence that Trump was losing support. Trump's allies disagreed. They pointed to Republican primary elections, where Trump-backed candidates continued winning. According to them, Trump's influence inside the Republican Party remained extremely powerful. Still, every political setback became national news. Every defeat became a headline. Every controversy became another battle. And with Trump's birthday approaching on June 14th, many observers expected political tensions to rise even further. Democratic activists were already discussing new protests. Republican supporters were preparing their own events. The campaign atmosphere was intensifying. America's 250th anniversary was approaching. Trump's 80th birthday was approaching. The Middle East remained unstable. Domestic political battles continued. The courts were involved. Congress was divided. The media was relentless. And Trump seemed to be fighting on every front at the same time. Whether any of these conflicts will be resolved soon remains unclear. For now, all anyone can do is watch and see what happens next. One of the biggest arguments coming from Trump's opponents is that his political influence is finally starting to weaken. They point to several recent elections and claim that voters are becoming tired of the constant controversies. According to that argument, Trump's endorsements no longer carry the same power they once did. But Trump's supporters strongly disagree. They argue that despite all the criticism, Trump remains the most influential figure in the Republican Party. And there is evidence to support that claim. Over the past few months, several Republican politicians who openly challenged Trump found themselves facing serious primary opponents. In multiple cases, candidates backed by Trump managed to defeat establishment Republicans. To Trump supporters, this proves that his influence remains enormous. To critics, it simply shows how divided the Republican Party has become. One recent race attracted particular attention. Trump endorsed a candidate relatively late in the campaign. When that candidate eventually lost, many media outlets immediately declared it a major defeat for Trump. But Trump's allies pushed back. They argued that voting had already been underway for weeks before the endorsement arrived. By the time Trump officially entered the race, many voters had already made up their minds. In their view, blaming Trump for the loss made little sense. Still, the media seized on the story. For several days, headlines focused on the possibility that Trump's political machine might finally be slowing down. Democrats were happy to encourage that narrative. After all, if voters believe Trump is becoming weaker, it becomes easier to challenge him. Politics often depends as much on perception as reality. Creating the appearance of weakness can sometimes be almost as valuable as actual weakness. That is why both parties constantly fight over public narratives. One side says Trump remains unstoppable. The other side says his influence is fading. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. What nobody can deny is that Trump remains at the center of American politics. Nearly every major national debate eventually circles back to him. Whether the topic is foreign policy, the economy, immigration, government appointments, court rulings, stock trading, campaign strategy, or media coverage, Trump somehow ends up in the middle of the conversation. For supporters, that proves his importance. For critics, it proves the country cannot move forward until it moves beyond him. Either way, the attention never stops. As June 14th approaches, political observers are watching closely. That date is significant for several reasons. It marks Trump's 80th birthday. It comes during America's 250th anniversary celebrations. And it arrives at a moment when political tensions across the country are already running high. Several activist groups have discussed organizing demonstrations. Some are planning anti-Trump events. Others are organizing pro-Trump gatherings. Social media is filled with arguments. Television networks continue debating every development. Pollsters keep releasing new surveys. Political strategists keep analyzing every number. Everyone seems to be searching for clues about what comes next. Will Trump's approval ratings recover? Will negotiations with Iran resume? Will Israel reduce military operations? Will Congress approve Trump's priorities? Will the courts block additional initiatives? Will Republicans remain united? Will Democrats gain momentum? Right now, nobody knows. What is clear is that the coming months will be important. The situation in the Middle East remains uncertain. Domestic political battles show no signs of slowing down. Economic questions continue to dominate public discussion. And the 2026 political environment is becoming more intense by the week. For Trump, the challenge is managing all of these issues at the same time. Foreign policy pressures, legal battles, congressional fights, media criticism, internal party disputes, public opinion. Every one of them demands attention. Every one of them creates risk. And every one of them has the potential to shape the future of his presidency. Whether you support Trump or oppose him, one thing is difficult to deny. Very few politicians in modern American history have generated this much attention for this long. Even after years in the spotlight, he continues to dominate headlines. His supporters see that as proof of leadership. His critics see it as proof of dysfunction. America remains divided on the question. And for the foreseeable future, that division is unlikely to disappear. So for now, the political drama continues, the arguments continue, the campaigns continue, the investigations continue, the negotiations continue, and the headlines continue. We'll have to wait and see how the story develops from here. For now, that's all for today's discussion. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the channel for more updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.